a.m. We'll go ahead and open up our regular session for December 17th at this time, and if folks could either turn off or silence their cell phone apparatuses, I'll follow my own advice and join us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Denise, do you have any additions or deletions?
I have two additions. The support letter that Darwin discussed yesterday for the multi-county resource zone update project. And we just received an OLCC application for the Courthouse Brews LLC. It's gonna be a pizza and beer place in Christmas Valley.
Okay, and we'll give that, you'll give that to the sheriff before we come back from recess this afternoon.
That is correct.
If he feels good, then we'll move forward. Okay, first item of business, public comment. Morning, Frank.
Merry Christmas, successful New Year to you.
Thank you.
And to you.
You too. Yeah. Okay. Under other business, budget committee recommendation, and
Yes, we had an opening, we'll have one every year with the staggered terms of our budget committee members. John Jones, during our meeting this year, thought he would not be available for another term, but we did advertise on the website and in the newspaper. No one submitted a letter of interest, and then in conversations with John Jones, he was willing to do another term. So you have some correspondence from him saying that he's willing to be a budget committee member yet again.
He's definitely an asset, he knows the process.
Yes.
I move to appoint John Jones to the budget committee for the term, it's a 3-year term?
3-year
For
term.
a 3-year term.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to appoint John Jones to a 3-year term, starting with the new calendar year basis. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. DHS IGA number 141416, amendment number 10, Ben was before us yesterday. Commissioner Kestner, anything you want to say about this?
No, as Ben mentioned yesterday, it's not a financial thing per se, it's just moving the agreement on a yearly, fiscal year basis instead of a biennial basis.
Okay.
Any thoughts on it, Jim?
No, this is the routine,
Yeah.
routine amendment.
Okay.
I move that we accept amendment number 10 to the 2013-2015 intergovernmental agreement for the financing of community addiction and mental health services agreement 14-14-16.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve amendment number 10 to the 2013-2015 intergovernmental agreement for financing the community addictions and mental health services agreement number 141416. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. SDF certifications and assurances, Denise.
This is just our annual agreement with, for our special transportation funds for federal funding, that says that we will follow all the rules set forth for receiving special transportation funding.
Mr. Bailey, did you read that whole
No, I did
complete
not,
document?
I'm not aware of this in any way.
Okay.
That means you're giving a thumb down?
No, it looks like it's typed out very nicely, so
I read it between 2 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock.
I'll make a motion that we approve our SDF certifications and assurances as presented.
Second your motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this STF certifications and assurances for fiscal year 2015 as presented. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Commissioner Kestner, do we need to get Darwin, or do we have any action on this next item, the planning commission member recommendation?
Yeah, he gave us a brief of it yesterday.
The planning commission
Was gonna make a recommendation.
have recommendations bring forward. Did Darwin not get it to anybody?
Yeah, let's get Darwin down here.
I don't think he might be in today, but maybe.
No, he was in,
Yeah, they acted on this last night, didn't they?
yes.
Yeah, there's a recommendation coming to the board today.
I talked to Darwin this morning, but it was on a different topic, so.
I didn't know he was coming in, so he probably just planned on coming down.
He's on his way.
Okay? It's the legal. You have to sign off that you read it. Okay, while he's coming, meeting minutes. What do we have on meeting
We
minutes?
have, let me get going here. November 4th, November 5th, November 12th, November 25th, and December 3rd minutes. I believe, is everybody at all those, Denise?
Correct. The December 3rd ones were emailed to you two gentlemen this morning, so.
Yeah, so,
Saw that.
Everybody was present at all
Okay.
meetings.
I move to approve all minutes as stated.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the November 4th, 5th, 12th, 25th, and December 3rd. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Darwin, Planning Commission member recommendation.
Apologize for not getting you guys this sooner, but this is our newest recommended planning commission member, Mike King. He lives off of Lakeview Lane up in Summer Lake. He and Meredith Smith were the two applicants for the 3 positions that will be open from January 1. We currently have 1 position, position 5, which Patch, Don Parker resigned from as of last month. The recommendation, I don't have it written up yet formally, but last night in the planning commission meeting was to appoint Mike King to position 5, which is the North Lake position, which was Patch's position, which will expire in 2 years, and then Meredith Smith to remain in position 1. So that would then leave position 2, which is a South Lake County position, still open. We did talk about realigning that a little bit, depending on future applications, and how we will advertise for that open position going further, since we still don't have anybody that's volunteered to serve in that position. But the recommendation I gave them, which wasn't really just determined yet, would be to put Commissioner Bob Pardee, who is serving as a Central Lake County position, put him in that position too. So that's something that I told them I would at least report to you, but that we could discuss in the
So that's
future.
gonna happen in the future.
Yeah, that
Right
can happen in the
before-
future, it's up to you guys, obviously, whatever you wanna do, but,
Well, let me see if I'm understanding it. We have currently 2 openings. Mike King was recommended for position 5 in
Yep.
North End. Meredith for
position 1.
the one he currently has.
Mm-hmm.
And you're now discussing another.
Yeah, and
soon-to-be
that can be taken up later, but, I mean, it would simplify it for me if we just took care of it right away, just because then I can just advertise for the central area instead of
So,
central / maybe south.
so the recommendation from the board was to put Bob Pardee into position 2.
That wasn't their recommendation. They thought we could do it later, but it was something I told them I would talk to you about today. So
So
they just-
what are you recommending? and what
I'm
is-
recommending that you take care of it now, but that wasn't their recommendation.
Okay,
But it could be, I mean,
Well, if you're gonna-
ultimately, it's
if
your
you're gonna-
decision.
if you're gonna advertise and you're thinking you wanna move one of the current members into a south end position
Mhm.
and open up the central, this is the time to do it before. we
Exactly, that's why I
advertise.
brought it up, yeah.
So-
But they didn't finish up with that discussion last time. But, I mean, it's not that big a deal.
I'm a little concerned, I guess. Are positions contingent upon where they live? The planning commission represents whole county. We tried it and we strive to get applications from certain parts of the county. if we're not able to get them for a specific area, we may end up putting somebody from another part. So if we make it
Exactly.
specific to an area and set that as policy, then that's what it is.
So, and I apologize, I don't have the current bylaws in front of me, but when we amended the bylaws this last year, we put specific positions, 1 through 7, and then we staggered their terms, so that every year, we'll have 2 positions except for that 4th year, which position 7 would just be by itself. And they have specific locations in which we're trying to get them to represent. Since Oregon statute says that they need to represent different geographical areas within the county, we kind of threw that in the bylaws that as best as possible, we'll stick to those specific areas.
So where you want to put Mr. Pardee's position, where is he representing?
He's representing central Lake County right now, but that's why I'd like to put him in position 2, which is a South Lake County position, which was held by, it's set to expire December 31st by Bert Young, so.
So we'll move Bob to the south, he lives here in the south.
Yeah.
Free up a slot in central, and. we
And then
can-
just advertise for, but obviously it's open to anyone, and if we get somebody from the south, then we may just appoint them to the south, and then we'll have the same situation that we're in right now, but,
I think we're-
and that's why I think
we're muddying the waters. I'm not a lot of heartburn. I don't know
yeah.
what is central. What's the definition of central?
It wasn't really defined other than probably Valley Falls. We have one from Valley Falls right now, and then
That's my
it
point.
goes, there's probably Summer Lake or something.
Basically,
Who's
It's
representing?
mostly
Who's
Paisley, Valley
representing
Falls.
Plush and Adel?
Yeah.
What does that
We
consider?
had John Flynn is for
Is
kind
that
of south.
central, south?
Yeah, and it was no east, so.
that's south.
Yeah, it's south.
It
So
just
John
adds,
Flynn's in.
it adds confusion to me. I don't know about the planning commission, but it's sort of confusion if we don't have designated areas, what the areas are. You represent central, does that take in from Valley Falls to Paisley?
It does take in Valley Falls,
To Paisley?
we
yeah. Yeah,
discussed
Valley
that.
Falls and Paisley pretty much. Yeah.
Summer Lake is north?
Summer Lake's considered kind of north, yeah.
Kind of north.
Might want to
It's
consider
not,
changing the bylaws
Yeah.
to basically have 7 positions, but with an aspiration to have them come from different areas and not.
Yeah.
and it says those areas, but, obviously we're gonna point. And again, I wish I had it in front of me, because it would be really clear. I mean, you've seen them,
Yeah.
The Plan Commission's seen them. It made sense last night, they just didn't give a recommendation. I mean, it makes sense to me completely, that's why I'm recommending it, but we may still get into a situation where we don't get anybody from the central, undetermined central area, and we only get somebody from the south applied, but.
I guess, Darwin, that's where I'm at is this has just brought a little bit more awareness of where your bylaws are at and what you're talking about. Maybe we have a little bit of a glitch there as far as fully understanding what designated areas mean. If we're going to go with designated areas, and we need to define those so the bylaws reflect that. I think what Mr. Bailey says is probably the right thing, is we strive to get people from this parts of the county, but it's not.
Well, it's the
it's
same
not-
thing we do with the budget committee.
Yeah.
If we don't have applicants
Well-
from all those areas, then we'd have to appoint people, so.
Yeah.
The other, what was it, a year or 2 years ago, when we appointed Bob, we
Yeah,
talked
year
about
ago.
where the areas were. Valley Falls, Paisley being central, we got Justin Farrell there, and we didn't get anybody else, so we put Bob into that. If we want a strong representation from the central area, which I'm assuming is 2 slots, we need to, as you suggested, move Bob to vacated south, because he lives in the south, and try to solicit somebody for that second central. Clear as mud to me. Oh, clear as.
Yeah, how the bylaws showing it's.
And we was ripping through this meeting until Darwin.
Sorry, I always complicate things. So we have 3 in the bylaws, it says 3 from the south, 2 from central, and 2 from north. And right now, we have
Yeah.
3 already from the south. Potentially we
Well,
can
one
continue
other
to
way
add-
that this could happen, Darwin, and it might give us a chance between now and then to clean it up, is for us to take action on the 2 recommendations from Meredith and Michael. in those two positions. And then you advertise your position, and Bob can apply for the South End one. The planning commission can recommend appointing, and you can select someone for the central. That's one way.
Yeah, and again, they did discuss that we could talk about this later once we have an applicant. So, it was just my recommendation, I'd like to clean up now, but we can certainly do it later, that's fine.
So,
Yep.
anybody have a desire to us take action on at least
Well,
those two?
I believe we need to appoint open positions.
Okay, I'm gonna make that motion that we appoint Michael King to position 5 and Meredith Smith to position 1.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint Michael King to position 5 and Meredith Smith to position 1.
And both of those positions are considered northern,
Yep, they're both north.
even though they're both in Summer Lake.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
So
I think we defined the boundary between northern and central.
with that motion just being accepted and going forward, it obviously looks like there needs to be flexibility within the bylaws and everything. So my recommendation is for the bylaws to be looked at and keep that flexibility in there, because a volunteer board and we get people to apply need the flexibility. So I would look to keep flexibility in there, because if we go to, you are representing this part, these two people are both central by their
I think maybe we could take the word represent out. You're coming from this part, because we want people to come from across the spectrum of
Whole
Lake
county.
County.
Whole county.
I'll clear it up.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
money now.
What we need is
But it's, the bylaws are flexible.
Yeah.
It's just, I've
So,
made it real.
so let's change them to make them flexible.
Yeah, they are, flexible. I just sound like they're not, I guess.
But it is the desire to have representation from different geographic areas.
And that's because it's state statute.
Yes.
That's one reason I didn't say
So, right now, we have 2 representing northern Lake County, as close to the north as we can get. And how many from the southern?
it. 1 from central and 3 from the south.
And we have 1 vacant.
Yeah, and 1 vacant still, yeah.
No, I think you have 2 from the central, Justin and Bob.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Even though
somehow.
Bob lives in the south.
Right.
Yeah.
So Darwin,
Yeah.
let's talk about the addition. Support letter, multi-county resource zone update project.
So, we got a letter for you guys to sign. It's, you know, if you consider the amendment in Miami, you guys of understanding to the LCD that we will do our best to get this mall code adopted as our zoning ordinance, and with the help of the consultant, and have that accomplished by the end of August this next year, 2015. I refreshed the planning commission on it last night. They were, in consensus, as to move forward, and they're looking forward to the project. It's certainly going to put us in a position to always be current with, the resource zones, exclusive farm use, and forest use zones that are primarily the zones that get, changed by the legislature most often. And for counties, it's the zones that, see the majority of the uses and applications for uses.
Okay?
Jimmy, do you follow all that?
A little bit.
I can tell you.
Catch
Right.
Darwin.
Yeah, I get you. I don't want to muddy the waters.
No.
I was gonna ask you, to go a little more, because some people watching
Yeah.
the video would go into
Oh, yeah, we'll get
these
the video.
and not have the discussion of previous without. But I think it might be best just to
Right.
let the sleeping dog lie.
Call my number.
It was discussed,
94760.
it was discussed fully yesterday.
By consensus, we're signing the letters, that's what we decided.
I think so.
I'm just saying this one.
Yep.
Not to take the meeting over.
No, go ahead. You're only a week away from getting it official.
I think, hate for this to be on record, but I think there's a trap being set by Commissioner Kessler and Winters of who would be the next chairman. Maybe it'll be back-to-back terms.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with back-to-back term, you know, momentum.
So the next item on the agenda, so Darwin, we'll hear back from you later on the switching around of the
Yeah.
one position. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I will continue to advertise for position 2.
I will ask you
That's
as
all we
you're,
feel.
I will ask you as you're departing, do you have any other department updates?
It's the east
Okay,
part of it.
thank you, Darwin.
Thanks.
Thanks for keeping.
Any other department updates, Denise?
I'm going to sit in on a little webinar training on special transportation at 11, so if we're done,
Okay.
that's it.
And we did our computer meeting on Monday,
We did.
so we're moving ahead on that project.
Moving
Computer policy.
forward on our policies and procedures for IT, so.
I did tell Denise, Mr. Bailey, that I will in the future try and set in on those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's good too.
He wasn't allowed to that day because he was,
Right,
So
sick.
Commissioner Kessler snuck in at the very end, slowed things down.
Yeah,
Nothing like running the app card.
okay.
I'll second that motion.
There was one topic that just caught me off guard, something about swapping things.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
we'll talk about that later.
So,
Saturday swap.
Mr. Bailey, we're gonna go to legal updates and we're going to ask you to talk about the state of Jefferson first. And we have been asked to send a copy of what the discussion is onto a lady in, I think Eugene, same. where-
Portland.
Somewhere.
Yeah,
Underside.
Christmas Valley, you talked to the lady up there you mentioned.
Right.
Basically, they just wanted us to be aware of, have a discussion, so we know what is involved in procedures and cost, should we ever consider a state of Jefferson.
Since she has asked for
Conversation.
the recording though, I do want to just send her that part because
Sure.
otherwise it bogs down the computer too much. So I'm gonna stop it and restart it.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Bailey.
Okay, the question of the state of Jefferson, and it's been presented to the county board to consider it. That was the way it was described. So I think the best way to present the issue to the board is to just describe by what is really an educated guess as to how this process might work, since it really is unprecedented. Historically, states formed from federal territories that applied to Congress to become states, and then the federal government would decide whether or not to grant statehood. This is something different, creating a state out of apparently 2 different states. But there are 3 levels to consider. There's the individual level, the state level, and the federal level. On the individual level, discussions about carving out a part of a state must be addressed very carefully, because there is a state law against sedition. And it's not sedition involving the federal government, but from the state of Oregon. And it's ORS 398.338, and it's either paragraph 2 or it's paragraph 1B that talks about calling for the overthrow of civil authority. So discussions of this kind from an individual have to be very careful so that they don't run afoul of that law. However, it is not a county issue. The question of whether or not a state can change its boundaries is a state issue, and the state would have to petition the federal government to change the boundaries. No state may change their boundaries on its own, other than Texas, which can do so only because it was an independent nation and part of its admission to the Union allowed Texas the flexibility of dividing itself into up to 5 separate states if it wants to. So no state can change its own borders without the federal government allowing it. And so that moves us from the state level, where you would need the state to petition the federal government, to the federal government level, and whether or not the federal government would grant such a petition. I think it's highly unlikely the federal government would ever grant such a petition for a few reasons that are both political and economic. Allowing a state to change its boundaries would set a very problematic precedent in that one could imagine states deciding that they wanted to dispense with the most economically burdensome parts of their territory. However, that is part of the formula when a territory applies to become a state. Is the federal government says, well, okay, this is where you geographically will be. And it isn't just, okay, only the most economically viable will become a new state and the other areas will remain federal territories. So as part of the creation of statehood, there are parts of every territory that are going to be part of the new state that may or may not be, well, they're not going to be of equal economic viability. So I think the precedent of carving off part of a state for whatever reason, whether it's economic or even political, would be a bad precedent. On the political side, you would not want a state to be allowed to separate along the lines of a political issue or political parties, because then you get back to defeating the purpose of federalism, which is to have all the states working together. If you separate them out so that certain states exist because they support only certain issues, you get right back to what the Civil War was all about, and you create divisions in the country. So I don't think the federal government would allow it under either an economic, setting a bad economic precedent or a bad political precedent. A more practical issue, though, is that doing this would cost millions of dollars. If you're going to create a new federal territory out of a part of the state of Oregon, then everything the state of Oregon has in that new territory, the state of Oregon must be compensated for. So all the vehicles, all the equipment, all the buildings that are owned by the state of Oregon, they're not just going to give them away. That new territory, and that means the federal government, would have to compensate Oregon for what it lost. Assuming that you still got past that, the step would be there would be a new territory created, and that territory would then have to apply for statehood to the federal government. And you're kind of going in reverse here, because the whole point of statehood is to allow more local governing instead of federal governing from a great distance. Well, now you're going the opposite direction. You're removing statehood, you're recreating a federal territory, and then you have to justify to the federal government that it exists in both a social and an economic level of integration that justifies statehood. Well, to do that, you then have to have all the administration in place. And historically, territories were essentially empty. They were just federal areas. And then they rose to a level of economic and social integration such that they merited or justified creating a state government. Here you'd be creating a territory that had in place a very large population, but then it would also have to create all the administrative entities to address the needs of the population. So you would have to very quickly elect representatives of the territory. You would have to have a taxing structure in place. You'd have to have law enforcement and courts and everything, as well as the payroll for all of that, to show the federal government that you could run it on your own. That kind of transition would cost tens of millions of dollars. So
And to put it in on an omnibus spending bill.
you could just put it on the omnibus spending bill. The process, to get back and simplify things, the process is one that must begin at the state level. The state would petition the federal government to allow it to change its boundaries. And in doing so, that would create a territory and everything would flow from there.
Well, Mr.
In this
Bailey,
case, you would need two states doing it if you're going to create what I understand is the
well, yeah,
geographic area.
if it included these other counties
Yeah.
that have talked about it, but the only question I have, and I don't favor doing this at all, but when you say the states have to start the process, why would the state start the process unless the counties ask the state to start the process?
Well, I don't think it's the question of the county making the request as it is the population in the area that wanted to separate from the state. Those people would make their voice heard at the state level. But it's not a county issue at all.
Right.
It's truly a state issue, and that means you're gonna have to have the population of the individuals petitioning their state representatives to bring it forward as a state issue and not a county issue.
I just want to be clear that this was brought to the Board of Commissioners. This is not a Board of Commissioners
Correct.
want. At least I'll speak for myself.
Right.
This is not a Commissioner Winters want. This was brought and the question was asked of us. And I want to make sure that's very clear that this is answering the question to the public.
An individual posed a question, I understand, first to Commissioner Shallon and then to me. Would you guys discuss it? And I thought it'd be very educational for everybody to have discussion that you just had with no emphasis beyond that point.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was presented as to consider the concept of this process and how it might go forward, so.
Well, and the request was made for the board to supply a resolution that says that they supported that movement so that this group could
Well,
take it forward to Salem.
A resolution would be unnecessary and probably, in my opinion, not part of county business, so as legal counsel, I would recommend against that.
I accept that.
Yep, concur. Other legal updates, Mr. Bailey?
No, other than the fact that, as he said, we're already proceeding with the computer policy, and it's something that's very, very important, as we all know. And I think ultimately, once we create the document, we're going to have one or two sessions where we present sort of a meeting in which the principles are communicated to the employees so that everyone is aware of it, and then we'll probably have the policy that everyone will get individually, and then they'll sign off on the policy, so that they acknowledge that they've read it and understand it.
Good.
Looking forward to that getting
Yeah.
in place.
Back on the state of Jefferson, I appreciate you educating us so we can speak intelligently on the subject. That was a good civics 101.
Mhm.
I recommend watching the movie The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, if you want to see
That's
it.
one of my favorites.
Okay, executive session, do we have any items for executive session?
Nothing for legal.
Okay.
Is that no? Is that a yes or a no?
Thank you for yes or no, and I don't have.
Well, nothing that starts off with N-O.
Okay. At 1:30, we're scheduled to come back from our recess that we will take here in a minute or so to take up in a joint session with Harney County some discussion on what's the state of the consensus project around Davies View. So at 10:33, we will recess our meeting and come back at 1:30.